Hello there and welcome to the Latin Explosion with me, DJ Tuli on Colorful Radio. And on today's show, it gives me an enormous pleasure to welcome an amazing artist, a pianist, composer, musical director, a total legend, none other than Mr. Gilberto Pulpo Colon Jr. Gilberto, welcome. How are you? Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us
Uh,
today.
well, first of all, Tuli, thank you for the invitation. Special thank you to our mutual friend, Joel Pivo Marquez, Venezolano, percussionist, musician, a leader in his own right, living in Colombia. Pivo, I love you. We love you.
Yes,
And I want to thank God for making the date available to both of us and to all of your listening audience of Colorful, the program that you host on Wednesdays, alternating with the other DJ that features music that we're talking about, which is música latina, Latin music, música tropical.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Gilberto. So what we would like to do today is talk a little bit about your musical career, which is amazing. And it started so early on in your life. And, in the growing up in New York at the tender age of 14 years old. And you started with, you were a drummer, right, to begin with. And tell us how did that all start? I believe that your mom was quite into music and your dad was a poet, so
That's
the
correct.
passion came from being always surrounded by music, I guess.
I would say that the passion that I inherited comes from both. But let's call it what it is. My mother was the one that I was with because my parents separated while I was young. So I was exposed to music basically because my mother would listen to music each and every day. On the weekends, when it came time to clean the house, she wouldn't clean unless music was on.
Nice.
And the
Sounds
music
like
that
my
she
mother.
listened the music that my mother frequented was música latina, música de trio, romance music. Not salsa per se, romance music, Mexican mariachi music, rancheras, boleros, baladas, and then music that was from her era growing up in the 40s and the 50s before she immigrated to New York. And that was Rafael Cortijo with Rafael, with Imar Rivera, el Gran Combo that came after Rafael. All of that music she would play in the Bronx where I was growing up. Now, that's the music that she preferred because she didn't speak English.
Right.
I was listening to music of my contemporaries, my peers, maybe about 10 years old, and I was listening to rock and roll. I'm a rock and roller.
Oh, I know something. I believe that you are a fan of the Beatles,
I'm a
right?
number one fan. Maybe not number one, maybe number one and a half. I
And
am
have
a
you
Beatle
been to
fan.
the UK? Have you ever been to Liverpool, where the band is from?
No, and I'll tell you something, just on a side note.
Right.
I visited England, well, London actually, but England itself for the first time in 1982. And
Right.
I asked the owner of the club, by the way, it was Machito's Orchestra.
Right.
And you
Yes.
mentioned off air, Machito Jr., Tito Puente Jr., Tito Rodriguez Jr., and Fajardo Jr.
Yes.
I played with their father's bands. All those four guys, I have the luxury, the privilege, the honor of being able to say that I played with those bands with the fathers while they were alive.
Amazing.
And of course, when they died and they went on to better, greener pastures, may they rest in peace, I played and I still play with the Machito Orchestra under the directorship of Mario
Mario.
Guido, Machito Jr. And I play with all of those sons. It's an honor and it's a real privilege to say I play with them, but nothing takes away from having performed with their fathers.
Sure.
I'm not trying to minimize what they do. They're all great. I'm really fortunate to still be with that band. But the fathers was what gives you the actual appreciation and awareness of what this music was from the inception. They started in the 20s.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm 67, so I was born in the 50s. I don't know what the 20s is unless I listen to a record. That's documented, but it's never the same as being there with the people who started it.
How was it working with the likes of Tito Rodriguez
Oh,
and Machito and Tito Puente?
I did
What were
all.
they like? What was it like?
I'll give you a little bit of each.
Yes.
The one that I spent the most time with, two people actually, Tito Puente, the king,
Yes.
and Machito. I spent the most time with both of them. The Tito Rodriguez Orchestra, I played a week and a half at the Village Gate because his piano player got sick, and I was 17 years old, playing with a band called La Diferente, which opened up for Tito Rodriguez, and they used me on piano, and they used me the whole week. So a week is better than nothing, obviously.
Absolutely. Wow.
But Tito Puente, I started with when I was 16. My piano teacher, who was Charlie Palmieri, sent me to sub for him in a club called the Corso on a Sunday. And I stood with them like forever. The problem with Tito Puente is not a problem, but for me, was that they were older people. I was 16 years old. They were already used to wearing the same clothes every day, a uniform. They would work 7 days a week. I didn't have that uniform. In fact, I didn't want to have it. I had long hair. I'm a Beatle fan. I was learning how to play Latin music, but I didn't want to wear the same uniform. So it didn't last. I did 3 months, and I ended up getting myself fired. But I played with Tito Puente on and off for over 10 years. So I got to learn how to appreciate that uniform crap more later on in my trayectoria, my career.
Amazing.
And then, of course, the Machito Orchestra. I played with Machito for the first time in 1977. I did a sub. It was somebody else's gig. They called me. I did it. And he would use me once in a while when that piano player wasn't available. He would call me, and I do it. Then an opportunity came up in 1982 where the piano player that was playing with him, it was El Maestro del Viejo San Juan, Isidro Infante. Isidro Infante was producing in New York many different recordings, and he decided, since Machito was going out for 9 weeks to Europe for the first time for me, in 1982, he called me to do a church gig, and he offered me the trip. I was working with Hector Lavoe, may he rest in peace. And Hector Lavoe was on one of his skits, not coming to gigs, and ya me tenía un poco cansado. So I didn't quit him, but I said yes to Machito to get lost, to make money for 10 weeks. And I ended up going to London first in 1982, and we played in a Latin jazz. We played in a club called Ronnie Scott's.
Ronnie Scott's, yeah.
In Soho, in over there. And when I did the gig, the owner's name was Ronnie Scott. He played saxophone. He was from Liverpool.
Right.
Now, I didn't get to Liverpool, but he took me to Manchester.
Right, near enough.
That's real close. The same type of population, the same type of ambience.
Yes.
And I got to go there. And I got to go to other spots, Sheffield, England. We went to different spots because 9 weeks is a long time.
Yes.
We went traveling all of Europe, and we kept on coming back to Ronnie Scott's as the home base.
Right.
So when I went there in 82, no había mucho latino que digamos.
Right.
I'm telling you, none. I had already been to South and Central America, Venezuela 5 times, Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala. I've traveled, but in London, there were people from the islands, the Virgin Islands, that of course are colonies of England. Yes. And they speak British and whatever the case is. And I went there looking for Latinos, and we couldn't find any. 82.
Right.
I went back in 84 when Machito died. He died while I was with him.
You were in that tour. I was gonna ask
April 24th, 1984, he died. I was with him. He died while we were performing at Ronnie Scott's.
Yeah.
Now, when I got there, we did a week. He hired us for a week. And when we played there, there's a people, they call me Pulpo. You know, that's my nickname.
Yes.
We can get into that later. And someone calls me from the back of the room, Ronnie Scott's, Pulpo. And I didn't know anybody in London. They had Colombians in London in 1984. Colombians.
South of London, yeah.
I had Colombians from Colombia, pero no en Londres. And they had the first Latin club called Sol y Sombra. In Trafalgar Square.
Trafalgar Square, yes.
That's where that club was at. Colombian club.
Wow.
Aguardiente and all. I swear. So now, of course, they came, and shortly after, because I went back again, more Latinos started immigrating.
Yes.
They opened the door. Fueron uno de los primeros que llegaron a Londres.
Yes, that's right. The biggest Latin community in London was the Colombian.
They still have Colombians there?
Loads, but there's lots of other countries. Yeah,
They're not the
Venezuelans,
only
mostly
ones.
Venezuelans, but primarily or originally was Colombians. Yeah,
Oh yeah. Well, no, now I know they got everybody else because you're Venezuelan.
yeah.
But I remember that when I went there, there was a Colombian there married to una Venezolana de Maiqueta.
Uh-huh.
I had been there. I had been to Maracaibo, Maracay, Catealamal. I played in all
Oh
these
my
places.
God.
Oh yeah, I've been with
Nice.
Hector. I went to Venezuela about 15 times. Those people would come see us from
Yes.
wherever they were at. They didn't care if it took 2 hours, 3 hours. They come. I was staying at the beginning. We were staying in a place called Caracas Hilton. In the
Yes.
beginning. Then 2 years later, they made El Arnauco Hilton. They made it on top of the expressway where they were like apartments, like condos.
Right.
But we used to stay in Caracas Hilton before the Arnauco Hilton, when Venezuela had money.
Yes. In the
And
80s, it was the best time of our life.
politically, it was a better situation than goes on now.
Yes.
Now it's not happening.
Yes.
There was Bolivar,
Unfortunately, so.
but Bolivar is all over the place.
Yes. Everybody,
Arepas down.
all artists wanted to perform in Venezuela because that's where he was at.
But now I haven't been to Venezuela in almost 15 years because if they come up with it, you have to be part of the government. They're the ones that will do it.
Wow.
If you're not going to get a visa to go in because it's too costly to bring somebody in from outside.
Yes. Yes.
Now,
Costly and dangerous, I guess, as well.
No, I know. The situation has changed.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the country's poor. I'm sorry, I hate to say it. The country has, but it's just the economic and the climate is not the best anymore.
Absolutely. Totally agree. I mean, yes. You couldn't be more right on that one. Now, going back, so from your time, I mean, I think we fast forward a few years.
Yeah,
You know,
I wanted to get my 2 cents in.
you mentioned, of course, you had that amazing experience of working with the big three, but also we were talking about your time when you started with piano, and you mentioned Charlie Palmieri. So
Okay.
that must have been an amazing experience learning from.
Since I cut you off, I was playing drums, my first instrument,
Right.
because of rock and roll, Beatles. Then in school, they weren't teaching drums, and I was enrolled in a music class. So they had what's known as brass and woodwind. So the brass is trumpet, trombone, whatever they consider to be brass. And they had an opening for trumpet. I didn't want to play trumpet. I wanted to play drums. But they said that the drums, since they weren't teaching it, you could be part of a dance band that used drums, but you got to also play brass.
Right.
I didn't know it at the time, but that's probably one of the best things I've ever done. I was exposed to melody because a drum is not really melodic, it's rhythm.
Right, right.
You accompany.
Yes.
And the trumpet was melodic. So I learned how to play trumpet. I learned how to read music. And I translated the trumpet to the drum. Then what happens is I was playing with local bands and the school bands. And somebody came up to me and told me that there's a Latin band. And I was into rock and roll. And they wanted a trumpet player. And could I come and try out? They were looking for a trumpet player. And I went. And the guy who played, the leader was a trumpet player. I went with his band. And I heard a guy playing piano. Now, I've always liked piano. They don't teach it in school neither. That's an instrument that's too expensive, too costly, and that's not part of the curriculum. So, but I heard the piano player, an older guy, and I liked what he was doing. So I would listen to what he was doing, and at the same time, I started becoming more aware of my roots. What does that mean? It means that at the time when I was doing that, it was probably 1966. And in 1966 in New York, I was still listening to the Beatles. They came out in 64. Still listening to the Beatles. They had stations dedicated to the Beatles, to the Rolling Stones, to Dave Clark 5, to all of the bands that came out of England.
Yes.
You know, that British invasion, they called it.
Yes.
And they put a station on in New York that featured Latin music, but not the Latin music that my mother was listening to. Okay. Latin music, but with English lyrics. It was called the Boogaloo era. Boogaloo and Chingaling.
Right.
And I heard one record in the radio with a guy named Johnny Colon.
Yes.
Trombone player, plays piano, plays drums. And he had an album and a tune that was estaba pegao. On the station that they were featuring that music, which by the way was Symphony Sit. There were 2 stations in New York. Both of them, the MCs were Jewish and they were Latin fanatics. Mm-hmm. And that time, the Boogaloo invasion came in, where the music was like mambo, cha-cha-cha, boleros, but with English lyrics. And my generation wasn't really speaking English, because if you grow up in New York and you weren't born, let's say in Puerto Rico, La República Dominicana, Cuba, Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia, there weren't that many in New York, right? Where I was at in the Bronx, it was just Cuban and Puerto Rican.
Right.
And a couple of Dominicans started coming in. So you really weren't speaking Spanish unless your mother at home couldn't speak English like mine and forced you to speak Spanish.
Yes.
Now, most times my generation, my contemporaries, would speak Spanish because they were forced to, but in the street we wouldn't speak Spanish because we didn't know how to pronounce the words right. We felt stupid. Yeah. So we thought we were killing the language, which we were. So we kept speaking English. The Boogaloo introduced my generation to Latin music, and little by little, on top of the tunes that spoke English, he would put 1, 2, or 3 tunes with Spanish lyrics, forcing you to learn Spanish.
It was trendy then to having to learn Spanish.
The people who produced them knew what there's a business. They knew what they were doing, because we estábamos perdiendo la raza, las raíces.
Yes.
We were losing our roots.
Wow.
We were acclimating. We were growing up American, Americanizado.
Wow.
And we don't want to speak Spanish. We would laugh at people that came from the island, like if they were different than us, which is not true.
Yes.
And that's also a political move. Also, it separates you from the people from where your parents came from.
Yes.
My parents were not born in New York. They emigrated here for a better life. They had no money. The economic situation in Puerto Rico was rough, and we had 6 people in the family. So it really wasn't my mother's choice to come here. She followed my father. My father started working in a factory, and mommy too. Only Spanish. No sabían hablar inglés. And she refused to learn. How's that one? I was the one. If she had to go out into the street and she needed an interpreter, I was the interpreter. She put me out of school to go interpret. Oh, mira.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. So that was at the tender age of 13, right?
13, that's correct. Yeah, 13.
And then from 14, that's when you started then playing the piano.
Right, at 14, I like I told you, I got that guy, and that guy didn't read music. He played piano by ear, but yet he showed me a couple of things. And I was always gifted and fortunate and blessed enough to try to get ahead in the summertime. In New York, you go to school from, let's say, September through June, and then you go out for summer vacation. It's a vacation of 2 months. And you could play ball in the street. You could do whatever your parents allow. I never played ball in the street. I would go enroll myself to further my career. In other words, para adelantarme las clases para el próximo semestre. Oh, I would go to school, and I got a scholarship to go to a school called Fieldston, which is in Manhattan. And they had piano, because there it wasn't a regular school. It was an elective. They gave me the opportunity to do things that the regular school semester doesn't allow. And I took piano lessons there. That's where I started getting wrapped up on piano. Right. And I was still playing trumpet, but the piano, and I had no piano. I had no money to buy a piano. So the teacher came to my house. It was a lady, Jewish, and told my mother that she would sell my mother an upright piano that she had, that she wasn't using. She owned the house. It was in the basement, and that my mother could pay it off a plazo.
That's wonderful.
A tiempo, whatever it is. And that's how I got my first piano.
Wow, that's incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's amazing. And then later on, so that was the age of 14, and then
that's 14.
Did you start with that, Charlie? Was that at 16?
At 15 and a half, because my birthday is always in December.
I wasn't 28th of December.
Yeah, at the end of December. So I went to the course with my sister, who's older than me, and I saw him playing with his own band. And I went up to him and I asked him for his card, and I lied. I told him that I play piano. I don't play piano. I was taking lessons. I couldn't play for nothing. And he gave me the card, and he tells me, I live in the Bronx, and this is where I live. Call me, and we'll talk about it. And he said to me, come, you can stand behind me. And in the course of the bandstand, I stood behind him, and I was like, huh? I was like in heaven. I was mesmerized because he was allowing me to see what he was doing. And he was a monster. And the very next, that was a Sunday. The very next day, which was Monday, I called him and he told him, come to my house. So I had no money for the bus and I lived pretty far. We lived in the Bronx, but I lived far. I lived in a real poor neighborhood and he had a house in a beautiful neighborhood. Right. And I went and to get on the bus, I remember I begged the bus driver. I lied. I said I lost my money and I had to go somewhere. He let me get on for free. It was probably 10 cents the fare. Wow. But I didn't even have that. And I didn't even tell my mother. She would have worried. My mother treated me like a little girl. Bottom line. I like the seventh freaking girl. Anyway, I got to Charlie's house and you know who was taking piano lessons? Pete Rodriguez. Pete Rodriguez was from the Boogaloo days. I Like It Like That. Micaela. I don't know if you know about that era.
Yes.
That's before me. He was playing piano already and taking lessons with Charlie. And when I saw that, I said, holy smoke. He wanted to charge me $20 for an hour lessons. And I looked at him and I didn't know what to say, but I started crying. And I hate myself for crying. Yet I don't. I'm just saying from a point of view of being embarrassed, con pena, because I didn't have that money. I didn't have 20 bucks. Yeah. I didn't even tell my mother that I wanted to study with this guy. We couldn't afford that. But he saw me crying and he felt sorry. And he asked me how I got there. And I told him I had to lie to the bus driver. I gave him my address. He called my house and he spoke to my mom. My mom didn't even know where I was at. And he told my mom who he was. My mother probably thought he was lying. And he says, I'm going to give your son lessons. I charge 20 bucks, but I'm going to charge him 10. Is there any way you can get 10? And my mother worked in a factory.
Wow.
That's right. And I got the $10 the very next day. My mother gave it to me. And I know that had to come out of the rent. That had to come out of clothes for my sisters. Probably even food.
Yes.
And I started studying with Charlie.
Amazing. That's beautiful story. Amazing story, Gilberto. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's incredible. And how many years were you with Charlie?
You know what? Every time somebody asks me, I'm sure, but I'm not sure. So I give out something just to answer the question. But the last interview that I did, I sort of understated how long I studied with him. And it made me go back to my notes. And so I feel bad about everybody else. I'm sorry. I studied with him about 2 years and a half. In fact, more than 2 years and a half. Wow. Lo que pasa que to the date, he was the best thing that ever happened to me music-wise. Now, let me explain what does that mean. It means a couple of things. It means that I might have taken it. I didn't know how serious I was going to be with the piano. I know I wanted to study with him. I didn't know how much of an impact he would eventually have on me because that comes with years down the line.
Yes.
If God grants you the ability to last a couple of years like me, and you're able to rewind the tape and say, wow, I know this because of this. I know this because of that. Right. And then you give credit where credit is due. He taught me a lot of things. I mean, I'm also sure that it was him that didn't want to teach me no more. The same way I'm sure that he wanted to teach me because in his house, Eddie Palmieri would come. It was his younger brother.
Yes.
And Eddie Palmieri era lo que nosotros en español decimos rumbero. It's the same thing, a rumbero. He's a street guy. He was informal, whereas Charlie was formal. So Eddie would come during my piano lessons and he would start tinkering with it. I was a fan of Eddie's too. Yes. But Eddie was like dirty, like instead of being so clean and classically trained, he was street. He was doing what I said, wow. Now, Charlie didn't want to teach me Latin music. He was teaching me classical music.
Right.
Which helped me, which definitely is the foundation of all music.
Yes.
This music. You can learn and deviate later on. But I came one day when he took a phone call, and in the background, the piano was in the living room, and I started playing a montuno, tunki, tunki, whatever I did. And he looked at it, he didn't say nothing. And when he got off the phone, he came to me and says, no! He You can't, I don't want that. And
Oh,
me regañó, and I was embarrassed because, I thought he would be impressed by me playing that little piece of whatever.
yeah.
And the truth of the matter was the same thing with my students. I have students that I've been teaching through the years,
Right.
and I wouldn't want to teach them Latin music. I want to teach them so they get better at whatever they're doing. But they come to me for Latin music. That's what they're paying me for.
Right.
And that's probably what I'm known for. I'm not known for classical music.
Yes.
I love jazz, but I'm not known as a jazz piano player. I like jazz, but don't mean I'm good at it. And so I learned that what he did to me, he did it the best way he could. To try to teach me, stay here and focus. You'll get there eventually, is what he was telling me. But he didn't say that. Después. I got that después.
Wow.
My students, I know that if they don't want to learn classical, they're not going to get it from me because I don't have it. I got the foundation. They come to me because they want to play Latin music and they want to sort of play like me. So I don't have to tell them, don't do it. That's it. And anyway, I think he was disillusioned with me.
Oh.
I mean, I'm trying to, my last interview that I did made me go back to my books, el cuaderno de las lecciones de piano. And it made me look at the book and I still got it. And I said, ooh.
Wow.
I mean, we were friends until he died. May he rest in peace. But he knew that I was bitten, as they say here, bitten by the Latin bug, la música latina, salsa, because it wasn't called salsa yet.
Tropical, yes, tropical.
It was called música latina.
Yeah.
La salsa came later. It was a commercial term.
Yes.
And each country put a spin on it. So Venezuela has the greatest, baddest people playing music, and they put their style, their touch. Oscar de Leon, Dimension Latina, whatever, whoever.
So what's your take, Gilberto? What's your take on the story behind that word?
I have nothing to say with it. I'll tell you what I heard, because I have nothing to do with the evolution of that word. It was a word that, for all intents and purposes, somebody needed a term that was commercial, that could be applicable to all of these different styles and rhythms, and you could sell it. It could be sold. Salsa, whether it's Venezuelan salsa, Colombian salsa, which is a little bit faster, whatever. It was Peruvian, salsa peruana. Those are the three countries and now Mexico too. Yeah. Mexico has that with the dancers and with the musicians. They got good musicians all over.
Yeah.
When I first started traveling with HECTOR LAVOE around 1975, 76, los territorios, los diferentes países, they were still virgin. They had nothing but Cuban influence, not New York, because Cubans still have relations with Venezuela, Mexico, with Colombia. It's only the United States that cut the ties with Cuba.
Right.
It doesn't mean they didn't get the music. It didn't mean we didn't get the music. It means it wasn't allowed. You had to do it underground.
Right.
The United States government didn't want anything to do with Cuba. So they wanted to punish them. That's a political move. I don't think we ever had anything against Cuba. We didn't, but the governments.
Yeah, of course.
They felt that they're going to the left. They were communists. They were revolucionarios. All of these things that impacted a lot of South and Central America, because they refused to allow the United States to go in there and dictate what goes on. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm puertorriqueño, pero soy americano, porque nací aquí. But when you look at your roots are defined by a couple of things: culture, language, and customs.
Right.
Although you're in Venezuela, I relate to you a lot. And food. Food. Tú sabes, el lenguaje varía. Hasta en Venezuela, from one province to another, it's different.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But we're still Venezuelan.
Absolutely.
We still die for the red. The flag is still the three colors and the stars. We're still Venezuelan. So it's the same with all the countries. I mean, political aside, we have more in common than not, believe it or not.
Yes, especially Latin Americans. We're so, warm and happy, and
we're a people that if we were more unified, I'd say we would be a force to be reckoned with. That's the truth. Ain't nobody going to be able to come in there and dictate what to do when it's not your country. But anyway, music was the bridge that allowed me to go and meet people like you, or people de tu raza, de tu país, and even different places in Venezuela. And I got to meet Oscar de Leon while he was still with Dimension Latina.
Wow.
He hadn't left yet.
Nice.
Yeah.
1975?
That's right. I joined Hector in 75.
Yes, you were only 22 years old when
That's
you
correct.
joined Hector's band.
I was 22 years old. That's right. I had hair. Esto es una peluca. I had real hair. No, yo soy bien vanidoso. This is a wig. But I had hair.
Wow, amazing. So how did that come about? How did you then
Hector?
ended up working with Hector?
Hector Lavoe comes into my life in 1970. 1970, I could have been 16 years old. I was going to my last year, the 4th year of high school. El
Right.
cuarto año de escuela superior. A senior in high school, on my way to college. And I was already playing piano. I was playing with local groups. And in 1970, I had my own band, and a trombone player in my band was living in El Barrio. El Barrio, to us who live in the Bronx, is Manhattan, where all of the Latinos, the majority of Latinos live. They still do. Habla hispana big time. And the biggest migration lately has been Mexican.
Right.
They're all in the barrio, but they're
Right.
still, hay cubano, hay venezolano, hay dominicano, y muy importante todavía quedan puertorriqueños, todavía. But in those days, the biggest Latino population was in the barrio.
Right.
And this trombone player tells me that there's a band that his uncle plays bass for in the barrio, and they need a piano player. Would I be interested in going just to do a rehearsal? He didn't say nothing else. And that he spoke to his uncle about me. So I said, I wasn't going to break up my band to play piano for another band. So I said, but he said, come on. And I'm doing the rehearsal too. Come on. So I went to the rehearsal, and the rehearsal was for a band called Rafi Valenzuela y La Diferente.
La Diferente.
Now, they're a new band. They came from Puerto Rico, the bulk of the guys. And the piano player, I knew the piano player. He played trumpet. His name was Charlie Hernandez. Played real good trumpet. I didn't even know he played piano by ear. So when I saw him playing piano by ear,
wow,
I looked at what he was doing, and I said to myself, I could do that. That's what I said. That sounds egotistical. It sounds arrogant now that I think about it. But the reality was, I was impressed by that band. It sounded better than my band. So when I said that to myself, I said it thinking, I could do that. I could do what that guy's doing. Because he told me to go to the rehearsal because they're looking for a piano player.
Right.
Meaning me, or whoever went that day. It was me. So I could see myself playing with that band. In
Wow.
fact, that was 1970. I could see myself breaking up my band to be with that band if they took me.
Wow.
I didn't say nothing, and I didn't even play the piano. I heard maybe an hour and a half of rehearsal, and I was drooling like this, like a dog. I wanted that gig. So as soon as the rehearsal was finished, the trombone player, whose name was Frankie de Jesus, he lived in El Barrio. The bass player was Ralphie Picard. And I met Rafi Valenzuela, who was a timbalero. I met the musical director. His name was Jose Luis Febles, plays trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
A genius. So that was my chance to get onto another level of crap. So I told Frankie, I want that gig. And he says that the timbalero says that I got to come back the next day. They want to hear me play piano with the band. So in other words, they're not going to invite Charlie Hernandez to come. It's just going to be me. Yeah. So in Espanol, it doesn't sound right what I'm going to tell you, but it's what happened. Me embarré. Embarré means that, te necesitas pañales.
A bit
I was
scared.
scared. Yeah, because they put me on the spot, and
Wow.
I didn't think that was going to happen.
Right.
But that he didn't tell me that. He told Frankie, bring him. I want him to try out, like an audition. So I went back the next day, and I gotta tell you, I couldn't play one tune.
Oh my God.
Not one tune. Me embarré, pero embarrado. Because I was taking lessons from Charlie, and he was teaching me how to read music. Music. Now, with La Diferente, it's slang. Slang means they're not writing out everything for the piano. They write it out with letters, chord symbols. You're already supposed to know what to do with it.
Wow.
So I looked at those chord symbols, and he counted it off. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And I was like this. I didn't know what to do. And they all looked at me like, what's wrong with this kid? And then Rafi, the leader, came up to me and says, I thought Frankie said you know how to play piano. I didn't know what to say. So Rafi came up to me and says, do you know how to play anything? So I played the same montuno that I played for Charlie Palmieri that he didn't like. The only montuno I knew. I was learning how to play classical music. So when that didn't impress them, the musical director, Jose Luis Febre, may he rest in peace, came up to me and says, what are you doing? In Spanish. ¿Qué es lo que tú estás haciendo aquí? he embarrassed me. I don't think he did it on purpose. He just wanted to tell me, you're not ready for this gig yet, kid.
Yeah, yeah.
So he tells Ralphie, I hear him. I don't think that guy knows how to play piano at all. So Ralphie comes up to me and Ralphie says, listen to me. I like you. Do you know how to play anything? And I played for him. Yeah, I played for him Chopin, a classical piece. The whole band stood there like this. I could have been 15 going on 16. I could have been 16 already, probably. And I played the classical piece. Well, I learned how to play it without music. And they all looked at me and they said, he plays piano. The only thing he doesn't play is música latina.
Right.
Give him a chance. He's going to get it, is what I thought they said without saying it. So that guy, Febles, came up to me and says, Tócame otro. And I played for him Beethoven. And he loved classical music. So he took out the trumpet and he started playing with me. Of course, I knew how to play it, but very simple, elementary.
Right.
He knew how to play like a professional.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he says, the kid came here on time, give him a chance. And that's how I got the gig.
Amazing.
That's how I got that gig, 1970.
And then in 71, they released...
Oh, no, now I started studying. I started studying with two different teachers, a classical teacher and a teacher that could teach me some Latin. Right. A guy that I met in a bar, una barra. And it looks like he didn't know how to read music, but he could play it. Wow. So I needed to have someone tell me, what do you do when it says D minor? And he says, this is what you do. He didn't know how to read it, but he could tell. I learned how to do that from him.
Amazing.
But of course I was getting better because I was starting to take the study in earnest. I got a gig. I hadn't graduated yet.
Wow.
So I started studying 8 hours a day.
Wow. Amazing.
I'm going to tell you how fat I became. I was the only boy in my house, all girls. Mm-hmm. And my mother was single mother. I became 275 pounds studying, not going down to the street, not playing basketball, nothing. Mira, puse un globo así bien gordo. But I got good at the piano.
Wow.
And that's all that counted. Now, of course, you can't lose that weight once you put it on. You're a big fat boy forever. But I learned, and in 1971, we recorded.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was my first recording.
Experiences, love it. Incredible. Thank you for sharing all these amazing stories with us. So you had that experience with Rafi, and then that's when you then met Hector?
Right. So I detoured a little bit, but that's why I said that Rafi Val. We used to rehearse in Rafi Val's house in an apartment, un building, edificio.
Right, yeah.
Y él tenía un departamento en el quinto piso. There was no elevator. You had a walk up, no a flat without an elevator. You guys call it flat, right?
Yes, yeah, we call it flat, yes.
A flat, okay, so we call it
apartment. Flats, yeah.
Y en Sudamérica they call it departamento.
Sí.
Nosotros decimos apartamento, departamento.
Oh no, in Venezuela we call it apartamento as well.
Okay, but I heard departamento and I said, what the hell is that? A department? Anyway. Because over here, a department store is vete para el departamento y cómprate un abrigo.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, you learn. That's why it's good to travel. The one word is different for everybody else. You learn different things. Yeah. Anyway, so in the rehearsal, which was 2 blocks away from where Hector Lavoe lived, Hector Lavoe baptized Rafi Val's oldest son.
Right. Okay.
And that's how I already knew Hector Lavoe was working with Willie Colon. I knew que estaba pegado. He was a star. I had never met him, but I knew who he was. Right. I also know who Willie Colon was. I seen them perform. And he was 2 blocks away. We would rehearse every Wednesday in that apartment. And he would go to the apartment to hang out with his compadre, with Rafi Val. Wow. And I met him. And he saw me play. I was getting better on the piano, by the way. And I knew he was a star, so I was always starstruck. I would always stare at him. So he thought that I was weird. Maybe I probably thought I was like, I didn't give a crap. He's a star. Yeah. And he was a good singer. Mira, un cantante bravo.
Wow.
Willie Colon and Hector Lavoe estaban pegados. So whoever saw them, the even the ladies would be goo goo gaga. So he told me, fooling around. I remember he told me one day, si tú estás por ahí, ya mismo en el futuro yo voy a hacer mi propia banda. So he says he's going to start his own band and he would like me to play piano. That's 1971.
Wow.
Him and Willie were like this. I could never see in the future that they were going to break up. I could never even see in the future that Hector was going to have his own band. He didn't look like a band leader. He always came across like happy-go-lucky, aloof, a guy who didn't care. Yeah. Willie Colon looked like a band leader.
Right.
Serious. Hector, as long as somebody else had the band in charge, Hector would show up. So I didn't think that he was telling me the truth. I thought he was lying. But it's nice to know.
Wow.
You know, se me abrió el fundillo así, mira. Yeah, because you know it's everything you want to hear, except that it's like un cuento de hada. You know what I'm saying?
Fairy tale
Yeah, because I'm
story.
still,
You have
well,
Hector.
because I'm starting out, so I'm still a nobody. Somebody to tell me I'm gonna play piano with him, I can't see myself that far away. He was like 11 years older than me.
Wow.
Anyway, that's where I first met Hector, and so it started a relationship. Every Wednesday, he would talk to me. He remembered my name. He would call me Gilberto, and everybody else would call me Gilbert. And I said, "Mira, es Gilberto." Wow, Gilberto. You know, me mataban el nombre. And I wanted to become a Gilberto. I was being proud of being Puerto Rican.
Yes.
So no quería, in school, I didn't want to use the O because I was embarrassed how people pronounce my name. And so I would say, all right, I let it go. Gilbert, Gil, whatever. And me puse más reconocer las raíces, puse lo y exigí. I made sure everybody says Gilberto. Yes. Even if you kill it and you say, Gilberto, it had to be with the O. Yeah, because now I'm proud of who I am. Right. My father was Gilberto Sr. I'm Gilberto Jr.
Yes.
And my son's Gilberto III.
Oh, I see.
Which is another story. I should have never done that, but anyway. That's the ego. Es el ego, tú sabes. Anyway, so I would go to Hector's recordings with Willie Colon.
Wow.
He would invite me. And I go, and by train, I had no car. And as I graduated, as the recording came out, nosotros, para tener la primera experiencia en un estudio, the album came out along with Marcolino Dimon and Sabor with the singer Ángel Canales.
Yes.
La Conspiración with Miguel Quintana. Those three albums were supposed to have been recorded with Fania, coming out with Fania, and we didn't know nothing. They put it on a subsidiary label called Vaya Records. Mm-hmm. Now, we were let down because Fania was the crap. To record on Fania, just established. Vaya, we felt less than. But it was the best thing they did. They made that label up so that they could lose instead of always winning for tax purposes.
Yeah, profit.
So, claro, so crearon un sello de Vaya para mostrar que había pérdida. So they didn't promote those three albums. They didn't want them to hit. They didn't want them to be successful, and they were successful because they were the kids, the new kids on the block. Fania was already old school. Ya estaban establecido.
Right.
Now Vaya comes along, and they didn't put money into it. They didn't send us to do interviews in the radio. Y todavía pegó.
Wow.
So Hector was always hanging out in our gigs because he do gigs in a bigger venue. We would do gigs in a social club.
Wow.
You know, guiso de cualquier low life. Anyway, that's how I got to know Hector. Okay. Now, fast forward, everybody that's played with Hector, I'm a fan of. They were my heroes. That could be Marcolino Dimon, may he rest in peace. Kenny Gomez, he's still around in Florida. Professor Joe Torres, Joe Torres, may he rest in peace. He just died last year. I'm a fan of that guy.
I've got questions to ask you about, but no, later, last.
All right, so then Professor Joe was the piano player that became my boy. He became my friend. When I first got married in 1972, Professor Joe was a friend of my sister's, and he would come to my house. I was 18 years old, and he was playing already with Willie Colon, and I would go to gigs with him because he had a car. He would take me and bring me back home like a babysitter. And I would see Professor Joe play piano, and I said, wow, that's a bad, aparte de que he recorded all those albums with Willie Colon, and no solo, pero mira, todo tiene su final. All those records are hits. Yeah. So I was a fan of his, and he was more established than me, and he was 12 years older than me. So with him, Hector and I became closer because now Hector knows me from Rafi Val.
Right.
And he would say, hey, Gilberto, and whatever the hell. So I used to see him playing, and I was, at that time now, that could have been 75. I was playing with also, may he rest in peace, Francisco Bastar, el gran Kako.
Yes.
Kako played timbales, and I played with his band. With his band, I went to California. I went to Chicago, Wisconsin, and I traveled for the first time early February 1975 to Panama.
Wow.
All right. Mano de Piedra, Roberto Duran, the boxer, took us. He took us there. He was a promoter. He put money.
Wow.
So HECTOR LAVOE met us in Panama, and he saw me, and he was a star. So Roberto Duran wanted to be around anybody who came into that country. Plus, you wanted to be around him. He was the lightweight champion of the world.
Yes.
Mano de piedra.
Yeah.
He was a hero. So in that opportunity, Hector saw me playing with Kako. That's how he got to see me. And now Kako's the band that I left to go with Hector in November. But when I saw Hector in Panama, he says, "Oh, ahora sí que tú estás tocando sabroso." Now he saw me playing a little bit better, you know, more experience.
Right. Yeah.
And he didn't tell me nothing about playing piano for him. So I felt really depressed. You know, I thought he was talking crap. He blew smoke up my butt. And now that he saw me playing better, he forgot what he promised or what he told me.
Right.
So anyway, fast forward, I kept on playing with Kako, and I became real close with Professor Joe. Professor Joe told me that there was a trip coming up early November to Puerto Rico that they were going to give Hector an award for the album De Ti Depende, which had Periódico de Ayer.
Oh, wow.
Pero pegao in all of South America, all over, wherever Latin music, they were the biggest, the hottest flavor of the week. On that trip, I remember Professor Joe calling me and telling me that they were having a hard time. He didn't tell me what it was about, and I didn't give a crap. In fact, it was probably me. I called him. I used to call him every week. We spoke all the time, but it's probably because I called him, because he was a big shot. He's a big shot. Anyway, so could have been November 19th. I never forget. In my apartment, I had a grand piano, and I had an electric piano. And I was probably practicing because I was in a kick of practicing, and I get a call, and the call starts out like this. Look, you hear it. And those days, if you hear somebody, you pick up the phone and you hear that, that's a long distance call, because the medium wasn't clear in those days.
Right.
It wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
Now it's like you sound like you're next door and you could be in another country.
Yes.
In those days, and I said, "Holy smoke!" And then he told me, "Gilberto, Hector," and I thought it was someone playing a game with me, so I hung up the phone.
No.
He called again and he tells me, "¿Tú estás preparado?" And I said, "Preparado." He offered me the gig. He said that his band, all the musicians left. He didn't tell me why, but he said he would be in New York about the 21st of November, and he had the first gig at Hippocampo on November 22nd.
Wow.
The Friday. So he says, "I need you to get the band together. I have nobody. Everybody left." He didn't tell me why they left. I didn't get to speak to Professor Joe. He probably wouldn't have said it. He's not that person to downplay anything, and he's not going to denigrate or speak bad about nobody. But anyway, Hector got in earlier than he was supposed to get in, and he called me up, and he said he was having a rehearsal in a bar. Did I get all the musicians yet? I thought he was kidding. I got on the phone, and I got Danny Rosado, my friend on bass. The conga player was Papo Conga. I got Papo Conga. And about a half an hour later, I had gotten everybody that he needed, and the phone rings again, and it was him. And he tells me, "Mira, que I'd like to meet you." And he was still living in the Bronx, but he told me to meet him somewhere else.
Yeah.
And he told me that, did I get a bongo player yet? And I told him I did. I told him I got the bongo player. Who was the bongo player I got? I don't remember now. Anyway, he told me I got to tell the bongo player that, because Jose Mangual Jr. is the only guy out of the band that's coming back, and that he was going to run the band.
Wow.
So I said, okay. So I called the bongo player up, and he was really hurt. I couldn't do nothing. And we rehearsed in the bar, a bar where people were still drinking. And while we're making mistakes and everything, the people like this, they couldn't believe it was Hector Lavoe. In fact, the whole band, we were all like, this is because estaba todavía pegado con Periódico de Ayer.
Wow.
So we knew we were going to be working. We were going to be traveling. It was going to be the next step for me anyway, and for the other guys. And anyway, we did the gig in Hippocampo, and I got to tell you, we sucked. We didn't sound good. And it was because we really didn't have that much time to practice the music. He had a lot of music. Music was hard. And although we had good musicians, we didn't have enough time to prepare. That's the truth.
Wow.
No, we did the gig, and we got paid, and we got more work out of it, but we knew we didn't sound good. And Hector said, "Oh, no, next week he said, we're going to rent the studio, a professional studio. We're rehearsing 3 days a week." And that's when it clicked. So it was 2 trombones, Miguelito Colon and Willie Vasquez, and Ray Gonzalez, Macoña on trumpet. And he tells me, you know Febles, you think you could bring Febles into the band? So I tell him, "But you know Febles too?" He said, "Yeah, but we didn't get along. We always fought in Puerto Rico." They're from the same hometown, Ponce.
Right.
So what it was is that Hector in Puerto Rico, well, he was already singing, so he was a big shot. And Febles was in a big shot, so Febles didn't like him. Because, That's the truth. He said that Hector se la echaba.
Oh.
Well, he was about 3 years older than Febres, so you can see that when you're a kid,
Ah,
that's what you
yeah, when
see.
they're older and there's
Yeah, no.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's about competition. Who's better? And I made it first, and it's an
Right.
ego thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, Febres was playing trumpet. I never forget, may he rest in peace, with Peter Conde Rodriguez. I went to Febres' house. He lived in the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, and I told him Hector Lavoe would like him to join the band. He said, no, 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 no. And I said, it's your chance. I'm going to tell him to make you musical director. And he's playing and he's rehearsing and we're going to travel. I lied about the traveling. I didn't know we were going to travel. Hector didn't like me that much. Anyway, so I brought Fabulous into the band. Now it's 2 trumpets and 2 trombones, and Fabulous is in charge of the music. Mira, from 1 rehearsal to the 3rd rehearsal, we sounded the way we're supposed to sound. And that following week, they gave us 5 baile, 5 dances.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I was working. I never forget. I was studying in school and working. I quit that job faster than you could blink.
Wow.
I quit the job. I knew I was going to make money. I knew I was going to travel. The job was not going to let you travel.
Wow.
Yeah. And anyway, with that band, that was the band. Hector saw that band. Mangual ran the business. Paying. Él pagaba, llamaba a los músicos, and Fabulous directed the band musically.
Right.
So Hector didn't have to do crap. Just show up.
And be his amazing self.
Right? And be who he was. Be who God made him out to be.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
we started traveling. I got to tell you, that year we traveled and I made money. Now, when I say I made money, I got to tell you, I didn't make money. In those days, 1975, the average pay for a musician was $30 a gig. $30 por baile.
Wow.
Hector gave me, for leaving Kako, $60 a gig. Double what I was making with Kako.
Wow.
The other guys were making $50. So I was making more money than Fabulous. But
Wow.
I got the band together for him. He counted on me.
Right.
I wasn't his musical director. I wasn't paying nobody. I wasn't calling nobody. That was still Mangual. And the big shot musically was Fabulous. But now Hector was counting on me because he saw I come on time. He saw that already people were starting to know me as a punctual guy, a guy de palabra. I would give my word. I was starting to sound better.
Right.
He had already heard me in Panama. So obviously he said, ooh, I got to be chill with this guy. He's going to try me. You know, he probably thought que los humos se me estaban subiendo para la cabeza.
Wow.
But that was, 75 was the start of my career with Hector.
That was an amazing story, Gilberto. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now, so going back with working with Hector and
Professor Joe Torres.
Joe, yes. I was going to ask you earlier, I think with one of the albums with Hector, there was an award that I think Comedia album won a few awards, and one of them was the best piano solo.
Well, a couple of them anyway.
They won a few awards, but in addition
that's
to
the
that.
first time I've heard of the word called polemica. I had never heard of that word before.
Right.
Venezuelan, by the way, told me that word. Anyway, what happens is, and that brings back a can of sour grapes. You know, I could either live with how I felt with what I'm going to tell you, or I can move on, which I chose to do because crying over spilled milk is not going to get it, and being bitter over something makes you bitter. You know, si tú estás encojonada conmigo, tú también vas a estar encojonada. I'm mad at you. My whole demeanor is affected.
Right, right.
So I have to be able to be the bigger person and let it go. Anyway, that was 1977. 1977, we did the recording December 22nd and 23rd of Comedia, which is the album that had Comedia, El Cantante.
It was the first solo album by Hector, right?
Yeah, no. The first solo album by Hector was La Voz.
Right.
The second was De Ti Depende. Both of them are Willie Colon productions.
Right, okay.
In fact, the third one was produced by Willie Colon also. El Comedia was produced by Willie Colon. And that's the first album I recorded with Hector in 1977.
All right, the first you recorded, okay.
But it was released in 78. And then when it was released, there's awards in New York. It's called the Latin New York Music Awards that had to do with the industry of la música latina. Bien sea salsa, balada, lo que sea. And I got nominated. The album got nominated for the best album, the
Yeah.
album Comedia. I got nominated for the best piano player for that year. And my solo, Bandolera, on Bandolera, got nominated as the best piano solo.
Right.
And the awards were held at Lincoln Center. And when they were bringing up the award, Hector also, by the way, was nominated as the best salsa singer. He won.
Amazing.
He won. And so when it came to the album won. And he was there with Willie Colon and Jerry Masucci to receive it. Best piano player. And by the way, we were performing.
Oh, so you were at the
I was at the event. And we weren't supposed to know we were winning the best band. They just hired us because we was the best band. We were the band that was kicking everybody's butt. Yeah, era la sensación del año.
Yes.
We were it. And when they say best piano solo, Professor Joe, best piano player for the year, Professor Joe, I was sitting at the piano.
Oh.
And
wow.
Hector said, what? He screamed. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. Now, I was shocked. It hurt me. But anyway, that was then. I was a lot younger then, so el genio estaba bien. Chacho.
Of course.
I wasn't as correct as I am being now.
Right.
I'm over it. That's like 42 years ago.
Right.
And anyway, so Hector decided not to keep performing. We had 2 more tunes to... No, we didn't. We left.
Oh,
He took the best album and took the best singer, but the best piano player, they wouldn't listen to him.
No way. So they wouldn't even apologize.
No, listen to me. Years later, they gave that award to Professor Joe. He picked it up, the piano and the solo. Years later, I found that out. Mira.
Wow.
But wait a minute.
But
let me share something with you.
Don't worry, it happens a lot. I think we've seen it in the Oscars before, haven't we?
Mira, Tuli, it happens until it happens to you.
Yeah.
Then you don't care that it's happened 75 times to other people. I don't want to care. I don't care about anybody else. I care about me.
Yeah, your hard work, of course.
Ese año que se entregó esos premios erróneamente, pues.
So
we went to Venezuela.
Nice.
And someone gives me a book, doesn't give it to me, shows it to me. And they didn't show it to me as to make me aware of something with a nice intention.
Oh.
They showed it to me to tell me, I thought you said you recorded Bandolera with Hector Lavoe while we were in Venezuela.
Right.
And I said, en español.
Oh, no.
No. And I said, I did record it. And they said, oh, no, not this book. Alguien en Venezuela no me lo dio, me mostró la enciclopedia de la salsa.
Oh,
Cesar Miguel Rondón. He wrote down that the 10 best solos in the history of Latin music, 1 was Ricardo Rey, Papo Luca, Larry Harlow, and 4, Professor Joe Bandolera. Wow. Cesar Miguel Rondón. I never met him, and I don't want to meet him now. He's over. That's over. He's published it 13 times already, and he never made a correction. He knows he made a mistake. That's an encyclopedia. That's not a personal opinion.
Right.
He screwed me up because when that comes out, that same year, Professor Joe recorded 25 times because of that album. People said, es el tipo que tiene que buscar, el que tocó Bandolera con Héctor Lavoe, búscalo para la grabación. They didn't call me.
Right.
So I could be bitter for the rest of my life. And I could be bitter towards Venezuela because he's Venezolano.
It's interesting when people write books. I met somebody who wrote a book and they made an entry about just minimal because they showed a picture of me and they mentioned me. And then the person very kindly sent me a copy of the page where they had published this picture with allegedly me in the picture, only to find out that they've used my name, but that wasn't me in the picture. So there is a book published somewhere that says that's me.
If it could beat the way you look, then so be it. If it doesn't beat the way you look, I'll kill him. I'll sue him.
She does look a little bit like me, so fair enough.
So then,
people could mistake her for me. So
well, the word there would be a likeliness, and you can get away with it.
Yeah, yeah.
But if they did it y se ve más fea que tú, mira, yo te hago una demanda para quitarle los pantaloncillos. But anyway, so what I'm trying to get at is, look how things happen. I don't look to have controversy.
No.
I don't look to be the person that when someone opens up their mouth and they say, Gilberto Pulpo Colon, and they got people, not everybody likes me. I'm aware of that. I don't have a problem. I'm not looking to be the popular person. I'm not looking to be president of the U.S. I'm not looking to kick Trump in his ass. That's it. I am looking to be honest, sometimes too honest. Because when you're honest, there's people who don't like what you say, whether it's true or not. It's Tuli's truth, Gilberto's truth, and somewhere in the middle, Dios sabe cuál es la verdad.
Absolutely. Yeah.
God knows the real truth. So it's your reality, my reality, and somewhere in the middle, God knows. So I'm not looking to create nothing. And that's why I told you before, the interview is dictated by the person who conducts the interview. That's you. Mm-hmm. I'm the interviewee. If you call me and you tell me people recommended you, I got a series of questions I like to ask you, you'll never get me to talk to you. Because I'm going to judge you by how we doing, me looking at your lips and you looking at my head, my wig. Because if I got to tell you what to ask me, we ain't happening. Because I got diarrhea of the mouth. Yo no oculto nothing.
Right.
And I have history. I'm not bragging about it. I've lived.
Absolutely.
So when you live and you got things to talk about, it makes for an interesting mix. Has to.
Yes.
The only person that can control this is you. I'm following.
So your time with Hector, you worked with him for over 17 years.
No, 16 years.
16
Correction.
years. 16 years.
Until he died.
Wow. Wow, amazing. So you saw him at his really fragile time.
I think the word is, that's correct. But a word that's more graphic, but it needs to be said because he's been interviewed. Somebody had the balls to interview him and they put it up on YouTube and he didn't look good.
No.
So the real word is deterioration.
Yes.
You're here and you allow people to see you in your worst state. A lot of people die and people prefer to see them or to remember them as they were while they were alive, rather than to see them in a casket. Todo hecho una miel.
Yes.
I'm serious. So when someone does it with malice, it's ugly. A lot of people will hold you to that. And they'll say, why did you do that? And he'll say, no, because people deserve to see that. That's questionable. So the word is, I was with him when he was, like I told you, he was my hero. He was here, I was here. 12 years of a difference. And then I started playing with him and I ran his band. I was his musical director.
Yes.
I was not only calling the musicians, I was paying them. I was in charge of the music now. So I also saw my development in the relationship within his orchestra. I became the go-to guy. I became a babysitter. I became the guy that would pick him up at his house with my car and make sure that I delivered him back to his wife. I would pick him up in the hotel and make sure he would come back because he would get lost.
Wow.
Your boy. So, yeah, the word is deterioration because he couldn't fend for himself. Now, did I do that with motive to bring him down and make him look less than by mentioning that? No. I'm only mentioning it because people question how loyal are you when you don't stick around when the crap gets really thick.
Right.
And it got really thick.
Yes.
And I stood there and I had to deal with his wife. That's personal. That has nothing to do with the band.
Yes.
So, yo estaba con él en la buena y en la mala.
Right.
The good and the bad. It's like a marital vow. I'm married to you and I'm with you through whatever the vows say.
Moving from the somber time of Hector,
Right.
what's your most fond memory of Hector? What was your best memory of having?
There's a lot of them, but we don't have all day to go through them, but I'm going to give you, in spite of that being one of the questions that most people that interview me ask. And if I feel that the interview up to that point was a good one, I'll relegate an anecdote or I'll tell you something that I probably never mentioned before. But if the interview goes great and that question that you just gave me happens to come in just because it came in, not because it was planned, like we did now, it's not planned.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that Hector was the person that made me feel proud of being Puerto Rican.
Amazing.
That's right. And if you're Venezuelan and they tell you, ¿Quién es un héroe para ti? Y tú dices Simón Bolívar, just for saying it.
Yes.
But then you have someone more contemporary, you know why you said it.
Yes.
No el libertador per se. He gave you more awareness. It makes you proud of who you are. There's always somebody. And when people expect me to say a dirty story or a stupid story, when I tell anybody, and I didn't tell it, by the way, I'm telling it to you, that he made me proud, it's everything that you're interviewing today. Everything. That any question you ask me, I'm not going to tell you. I'd rather not tell you that. I'd rather not answer.
Yeah.
That's when you know that you're conducting a great interview. It's flowing.
Great.
You're going to have more problems rejoining Zoom than anything else, because that's a good interview.
Yes.
Porque when you want to get out of something, you don't need an excuse. You just won't reconnect.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Sorry, people.
And obviously Hector was well known for always being late.
No, well, that's one of his lack of attributes, all right? That's where I came into play. I hired someone else to be a corista while Hector was there, and to also be able to hold the band while we were waiting for Hector to come, because he was infamous. He never came on time.
Wow.
Even if I picked him up and we got to the gig an hour before the gig, he didn't like being there an hour before. I had no problem. He said, I can't. So he would get lost on me. And then he comes 2 hours to the gig late. I had him there.
Oh,
he didn't want to be there. No, yo soy Hector Lavoe. I mean, not that he had an ego, but the people that are leaders, it rubs off. I guess they don't want to be there waiting around to start playing. They want to, y ahora con usted el gran Hector Lavoe, and come out of the woodwork running onto the stage. I was never like that. Even now, I got 55 years playing music. I'm not like that now. Anything, even an appointment to get my wig replaced, I show up an hour and a half earlier.
Amazing. Now, and moving forward from your time with Hector, most recently then your first solo album, which was Hot Bread.
Pulpo's Hot Bread.
Yeah, actually, speaking of Pulpo, you said you were going to tell us a little bit about the story behind the word Pulpo.
That story came about, I think, 1977, probably shortly after we recorded Comedia, but Comedia hadn't come out yet.
Right.
I was playing with Hector Lavoe. We were playing opposite Oscar de Leon. Oscar de Leon estaba de gira from Venezuela. They opened up for Hector on a Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
Excellent band. Culebra on piano. Bueno, los hermanos Roja, Radamé, the best band at that time. And when they gave me a piano solo, I was playing piano, and in front of me was Culebra. I was a fan of Culebra. But he also happened, and he's older than me, he also happened to like the way I play piano. So he was standing there watching me play piano, and I think I took a good solo, I think. And Hector says, wow, sigue, Gilberto golpea. When the number was over, he says, y en el piano, Gilberto Colon Jr., El Pulpo. That's the first time I ever heard that fucking nickname. Anyway, sorry. And I didn't like it. I'm going to tell you why I didn't like it. I had just started with Hector 2 years prior. I'm trying to get me to be known.
Yes.
Gilberto Colon Jr. Yo no quiero un apodo. I don't want a term of endearment. Mijo. Get the hell out of here. So I wasn't happy. I was not. I looked at him, and he looked at me, recognizing that I didn't like it. I was bothered by the nickname.
Right.
And he kept on the microphone, and el piano Pulpo. And then Eddie Montalvo, who's playing conga, who was my older brother, started calling me Pulpo on the stage, and all the guys in the band, Pulpo, tirándome bellones. In other words, they knew I was mad, and they hurt to insult to injury. So I didn't like it, and they kept on calling me. So until I stopped showing that I didn't like it, is when they let it go. But then Hector puts it on the album, and then you get used to it. And then people find it easier to remember Pulpo than Gilberto.
Yes.
You become a somebody, whatever that is. You reinvent yourself and you stop being Gilberto. Now people all over the world, where I go, Gilberto Colon Jr., Gilberto El Pulpo Colon. The Pulpo gets in there.
Yes.
I don't know what order, but even Gilberto is gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And so now I can't get rid of it, and I'm used to it, because in the music industry, there might be another Pulpo, but there's only one Pulpo that play with Hector. How's that?
Ensalada de Pulpo as well.
So then that's how I got the Pulpo's Hot Bread.
Right.
That's how that came in. Yeah. And then, of course, I did the group Ensalada de Pulpo, which is Latin jazz. And even with singers, ensalada de pulpo, let's say featuring whoever the singer is. And that's how that came about, really.
Wow. And that actual album that you did was your first solo album, and it won as Best Latin Album
That's
in
correct. And that's,
2009.
I'm proud of that, because right now, in today's date, which is October 7th, 2020, and I'm speaking to you,
Yes.
I probably done about 107 albums. Long plain, 33 Revolution, 12-inch, big ones.
Amazing.
Porque de ahí vino los CDs,
Yes.
antes era 78 Revoluciones, 45. We had all kind of formats. Now
Yes.
you just download it digitally. But I've done 107 albums. And that's the first album I've ever done on my own, with my own name. So I've recorded with a lot of people. And for me, it's quite extensive.
Amazing. Beautiful album. Absolutely love it. And
Thank you.
do you have any plans? Is there any plans on the pipeline for a new album coming out?
So, esto va a ser una primicia.
Oh, awesome.
Even though I've done about 7 interviews during the pandemic, I failed on purpose, not to mention what I got up. Why? Because I put everything on hold as of March 24th, when I was a social worker and they sent me home because I'm a chronic diabetic. So I decided then that whatever little bit of monies I had, we can't use it because you don't know.
Yeah.
There's no security.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was going to be fired. I was going to be, by the way, I retired. I retired 2 months ago after 31 years as a social worker. I'm a social worker. Even playing piano, I kept my job. And it's a good thing that I did. And so the uncertainty of where things lie today, or how far into the future, if this pandemic gonna last, me ha tenido un poco inseguro.
Yes.
Me ha aguantado. Pero as I speak to you, my compadre, Don Oscar Antonio Hernandez, el director musical of Spanish Harlem Orchestra,
Right.
is my son's godfather. He's producing my second album.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah. We already got the tunes. We're working on it. I haven't decided who I'm going to use as a singer. And by the way, it's going to be a salsa album. He wants me to do salsa, not Latin jazz. I was going to do a follow-up to Pulpo's Opera, the same thing. Maybe 2 tunes and the rest instrumental. He convinced me, no, let's do a salsa album. People know you, because he travels the whole world with that band.
Right, right.
And he's gotten a chance for people to tell him, oh, he's your compadre, and they ask him for me. And he tells me, let's do it. So we're going to do it. He's going to produce it. And I'm going to use different singers. I don't have a steady singer as we speak.
Right.
I had a singer, Ray Bayona. I had him for 8 years. And we're no longer together as an item. So I got all of these different singers that I've worked with in the past.
Yes.
I'm going to ask everybody to do 1, 2.
Collaboration with a few.
Yeah, I got one singer. I'm going to tell you right off the bat. He's going to do 2 songs. I already got him confirmed. Cesar Vega from Peru. El Sonerito de Huacho.
Right, right.
He's bad.
Nice. Yes. You've worked with him already.
Yes. Did you see what I did on YouTube with him?
Yes, yes. He's very nice voice. It's amazing.
Yeah, but now he's older. He was 23 then, now he's about 30.
Aww.
So his voice changed a little bit. He's more of a man, but he's still one of the best singers I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He's going to do 2 tunes for me.
Awesome. Oh, well, I look forward to that. So do you have an estimate, you reckon, when you might be releasing the album? Or is,
Well, here's the thing. With all the things that are holding on, the money is crucial, because I don't want to do something and have to owe anybody anything.
Yeah.
So what I gather from the record shops that I went to, that I frequent, or that I know they own, they're holding on. Whatever's coming out, it's either digital format where you could download a tune, whatever, that format, or to have the hard copy. We're looking to have the hard copy.
Yes.
Why? Because that's what I like. So if I don't have enough money to bring out, let's say, 2,000 copies, to be able to forward them to people like you who are promoting this music, I'm going to hold off until the climate is right.
Yes.
And then we'll go forward.
But
it's there. Oh no, of course. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's great to know that there's something cooking right now.
Well, and again, I haven't mentioned it in my other interviews, and on purpose, because when you mention something, it's dated. Somebody hold you to it.
Yeah.
If I say, mira, lo están terminando ahora y lo voy a sacar en noviembre, comes November, it doesn't come out.
Right,
so
right.
It is what it is. I have the material.
Yeah.
I have all of the musicians. The singers, no, because I want to be able to pick who I want. Right. When you're married to somebody, it's what it is. It's a marriage.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't use him, he's going to leave you. He's going to go to someone else. Nobody, as I speak to you, nobody as of yet is performing live.
No.
It's virtual. We got a couple of things virtual.
Yeah.
I've done 2 gigs already, private gigs for Colombiano.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't care.
Wow.
You know, nadie tenía mascarilla. Oh my
No
God.
way.
No, I'm telling you. So then I find that I made money, but that I shouldn't have done it because,
Right.
you know, you can get
Yeah.
contaminated in
Yeah.
one of those things.
Yeah.
Ellos están ahí para rumbear. They're not going to church. They're going to dance. They're
Yeah.
not going to, they take off the mask. They don't. So you know what? I did 2, and thank God I didn't get nothing.
Yeah.
But I can't risk it. I have to take a chance until this levels off a little bit.
Yeah.
And it hasn't just hit us. It's worldwide.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, we have to be patient until the time is right.
Over there too, right? In London too, right?
Yeah, yeah, things are bad here as well. So yeah, no gigs, no live gigs for us at
No,
the moment.
I'm not going to make money. I'm poor. Pretty soon I'm going to do the oldest profession the ladies got, nighttime walking.
No, but hopefully, fingers crossed, this is gonna be over very, very soon. My goodness me. I mean, we just have to be patient, I guess, with this thing. But you know, it is what it is. We have to live with this thing now. God
I
knows how
agree.
long it's gonna be with us. Yeah, it's gonna be over soon, I hope. And Gilberto, is there any message that you want to give to our listeners with regards to this beautiful music that we love? Un consejo que nos deja a nosotros. What's your advice to us?
Well, I mean, I don't know about consejo, but I'll tell you this. This is how I'm going to wrap this up.
Right.
I like people in general, be it people that listen to colorful radio station, all the stations around the world. Oh, because this is a universal.
Yes.
Music is universal, right? Transcends language and whatever the crap. And I like to be able to give credit, awareness, and give merit to people like you who afford us, people like me, and Mario Jr., Fajardo Jr., Tito Jr., and Tito Jr., Rodriguez and Puente.
Yes.
The opportunity while the pandemic is going out for someone to see that we're still here and we're alive. The people that allow us to do that is you, Tuli, and whoever else that I've been getting interviewed by in the past. Not enough people give that credit. It's like the first call, first responders, people that are there, even while there's a pandemic, dicen presente to be able to at least alleviate the situation somewhat.
Yes.
Music does that. And the
Yes.
only way that that's going to come back to fruition in the way we know it is for this pandemic to be eased. So we have to do our part to sort of prevent that from spreading. That's the first thing. Otherwise, live music is not going to come back anytime soon because music and the arts are always the last things to get activated.
Right.
So I like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And for those guys that I spoke, I take the liberty, Bibo Marquez, that you're giving us an opportunity. And for when it shows, people say, holy smoke, he's alive. Or holy smoke, I seen an interview with him before, but they never asked that question. That's the key.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much, Gilberto. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you with us and, you know, all this beautiful career that you've had over the years and all these amazing stories. We're very grateful and we're super happy that you're still making music. We look forward to what's coming out next and what.
Well, no, I mean, you've made a friend now, so obviously
Yay.
I'm gonna retain some type of communication with you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's it. It's recorded. It's recorded, Gilberto. I'll hold you to that.
No, but it's like a text. I don't like texting, but if someone texts me, I reciprocate. I answer. And that's a form of communication. And where you go with that, it depends on you. But the thing is to answer it.
Yes.
You can't be that important that you can't answer somebody.
Thank you so much, Gilberto. All the very best.
God bless you, and I'll speak to you soon.